I'm most proud of the mental work and figuring out me working on myself, because that was a really difficult process. And I'm a firm believer that over time you evolve and you adapt and you become who you surround yourself with. I thought I wasn't worthy, and that learning that was an idea that was placed onto me by someone else. Give yourself some grace. Like, you're young, you've got time. Yeah, I truly believe that there's nothing that's impossible if you want it bad enough.
Hi, I am Tatjana Pandurevic, and welcome to Moonshot, a space where comfort zones don't exist. Having spent most of my life scared to take risks, the one thing I am seeking now is to be surrounded by more people who are courageous, bold, unafraid, and relentless in their pursuit for success to help inspire me and hopefully you. In this podcast, we dive deep into the minds of individuals who see no limits, those who dream big and defy boundaries. Today on Moonshot, I'm thrilled to welcome Olivia Vivian, an incredible competitor in both gymnastics and Ninja Warrior. Olivia's journey has been defined by resilience, grit, and breaking boundaries against the odds. At 9, she was told she was too tall to be a gymnast. At 17, that she'd never make the Olympic team. And at 23, that she was too old for the sport. But Olivia defied every limitation, representing Australia at the 2008 Olympics, competing in the Commonwealth Games, and ultimately making history as the first woman to reach the Australian Ninja Warrior Grand Final 2 years in a row. In today's episode, we'll explore her remarkable journey from gymnastics to Ninja Warrior, the unbreakable mindset needed to perform at the highest levels, and the hard-won lessons learned through each challenge. Beyond the arena, Olivia is a powerful advocate, inspiring young athletes and championing causes close to her heart. With her incredible following and passion for motivating others, she's redefining what's possible for women in sports. If you're ready for insights on resilience, pushing limits, and the courage to pursue big dreams, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Olivia, I've been meaning to have this conversation with you for a while, so I'm so excited to finally have you on the show. I know you've been traveling a fair bit with all your competitions. Where I'd like to get started, though, is right back at the beginning of your journey. What led you to get into gymnastics, and how did that influence the grit and resilience you've built throughout your life?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, first of all, I'm so excited to finally be here, and your background just looks unbelievably amazing. I feel like I'm an astronaut going into space. But when we take it back to the beginning, I suppose I started sport, like many kids, is because my mother dragged me to it. I had a friend that was staying the night, and we were, I want to say, around 7 years old. And so I wasn't old enough yet to stay at home on my own. So she had gymnastics training, and my mum asked if I wanted to join her. And of course, my stubborn little self said no. And if anyone knows my mum, there was no other answer than what she was proposing. So she dragged me kicking, screaming, the full shebang. But I walked into that gym and I looked over, and I remember seeing this girl just doing circles around the uneven bars. Now, my mum took me in to do rhythmic, so the ribbon and the ball, and I just saw this girl on the bars and thought that was so much cooler than climbing on top of the roof at home. And it was like, just this part of me was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And then again, I was kicking and screaming and crying when she tried to get me out of the gym. So it was something that I saw and I loved. And from then on, I never missed a training session. I just loved it more than anything. I missed birthday parties and like play dates and stay over and stuff like that. If I had gymnastics, that was all I wanted to do. And I think the grit and the determination, a part of that came from my mother. She's a very determined woman. And by teaching me and raising me, she installed that on me. But also it just came from the dream of wanting to be an Olympian, and the things that you had to do to become an Olympian. Back in my day in Gymnastics Australia, there was no other pathway. There was no other choice than the regiment and the schedule and the discipline that elite program sort of had to offer. So I feel like it was just very taught. It's very taught.
It's amazing how you can remember that moment when you first entered the gym, and now you spend a lot of time in the gym, and not necessarily in gymnastics directly, but around very cool tricks and obstacle courses and everything else. And it's so impressive. I know every time I visit a gym, which is not often, but I'm awed. And usually it is watching the Olympics, which you were actually selected for in 2008 for the Beijing Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
It must take so much training and discipline to even get to that point. What type of elite performance or prep does it take to actually get to a point where you're selected for an Olympic level team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, gymnastics is a slightly unique sport in the terms that the first ever 10, which was like the perfect score, was scored by a 14-year-old gymnast named Nadia Comaneci. And before that time, the women champion were in their 30s and they were in their 20s. And so then this 14-year-old got a perfect 10 and won the Olympic Games, and it changed gymnastics forever. It was then taught and educated throughout the world that gymnasts are better when they're young because they recover faster, they bounce back, they're easily manipulated, and the alignment and the stereotypical body type of that sport was better before you're 16 and then you get a woman's body. And so it really changed gymnastics in a sense where even when I grew up and I went to the Elite Institute, I got invited to do a trial and I was about 9.5 years old. And even at 9.5, they said I'd be too tall. I'd started the sport too late. My knees were knobbly. I was this skinny little kid. But even back then, the stereotypes were sort of placed and those doubts were put on me as a child. But at the end of the day, I'm 9.5 years old. All I wanted to do was learn backflips, So I tried as a little girl to just listen to that joy and remind myself why I did the sport. And for me, I wanted to learn cool tricks. I'm a visual learner. If I see something, I like the look of it. I'm like, cool, I want to do that, or I have to have that. And then I'm kinesthetic. I learn by doing. So for me, I feel fortunate enough, first of all, that I was placed in an elite program because a lot of kids don't have that option or they miss out. And from then on, it just became I had to conform to the way that they did things. I feel like these days we know better, we have better education and we could do things differently. But back then it was very much we had Russian coaches. The communication, the English wasn't that fantastic. So on a daily basis, we were told we weren't good enough. Our skills aren't good enough. You're not going to make it. You're chasing this idea of perfection. And the routine, the schedule was we're training twice a day. We'd train from 6:45 to 9:45 in the morning and then come back and train again from 4 to 7 p.m. We did 10 sessions a week. We had Wednesday afternoon off, Saturday afternoon off, and Sunday off. And it was like that. There was no we have school holidays. We'd get maybe 4 days off at Christmas. So it was very intense. There was a lot of sacrifice, especially from my family. My brother, we didn't have bucket loads of money. So if he wanted to do any sport, it had to be free. And then it had to also fit my schedule. So it was a lot at such a young age. For me, a part of me was I'm learning tricks, I'm doing backflips. But later in life, when you really understand what that took from the family, it was a lot to get to the Olympic Games. And then you also go through the paths of am I going to make it? Am I not? The self-doubts. Do I love this? And the fear of failure crept in as well as I became eligible and the possibility of this team. And then there was also the fear of letting my family down because Trust me, they did not. They weren't shy about letting me know how much they'd sacrificed. So that fear of letting them down was also there towards the end. So it was intense for a teenage girl. It was a lot.
That's so much pressure on someone so young. And sports in general are quite competitive. I don't know gymnastics intimately, but gymnasts are very young when you see them perform at the Olympics. And you shared a couple of things. One is, like, how do you manage that immense level of pressure but keep the joy, which is something you mentioned. That's a very delicate balance to make. And then you also talked about the investment from your family. Often when I see athletes at the most elite level in individual sports, it's never an individual sport. Like, there is so much resource, time, energy that goes behind all of that, but it still amounts to a lot of pressure. So when you were going through it, were you just how were you managing it as a younger athlete?
If I'm going to be like completely honest, I wasn't. It did take a mental toll on me for sure. I'd say after the Olympic Games, I felt both physically and mentally broken. We had sports psychologists. I don't know why I do this, but from my experience, it felt like more of a manipulation of how to get you to perform. It wasn't, we care about you as a human being. It felt like we just need to get this out of you for the system. So it really didn't feel like we were, or at least myself, because I can only speak for myself and my experience, I didn't feel like I was given any tools to really manage that pressure. So I think mentally I really broke down, and the only advice that I kind of got was shut up and deal with it. That's how we were raised. So that was, it wasn't easy, but also at the same time, I wanted the Olympics. And I can't really pinpoint why. I think the why changed over the journey. Like, I saw Alana Slater, a girl in my gym, compete on the TV for the Sydney Olympic Games. And that's what I was like, wow, that is so cool. Like, I want to do that. And I'm the kind of person, once I set a goal, I'm pretty determined, and you can't really veer me off unless you teach me that that goal is not a great one. So for me, the goal of being Olympian was stronger than anything else. So, you deal with the verbal abuse, you deal with all this external pressure that they seem to place on you. You deal with the sacrifice. You deal with the injuries and the pain because you wanted that outcome more. And unfortunately, with a sport like gymnastics, it wasn't like running or swimming where you get a time and you qualify yourself. Ours was very much selected by coaches and a committee. So it was very much conform or you're not on the team.
Yeah, it introduces a lot more bias to follow the system in a really strict way.
I'm just waiting for the day where like AI comes in and like judges are eliminated. It's just like this bunch of robots and you perform a routine and it's like beep, beep, boop, 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 boop. That's your score, like there's no bias. It doesn't matter what country you come from, what your leotard looks like, how your hair is put up. And then I'd like to see teams put together based on scores instead of a selection committee that decides who they like and who they don't like, because so many different factors come into it.
Well, with the rapid development of the technology, I work in AI as part of my day job.
Cool.
That could very well be a possibility in the near future. Yeah. I think the bigger challenge, I don't think will necessarily be the technology per se, but the adoption and the willingness to change by institutions and sports environments that aren't as prone to leaning in. Often the technology is there for a very long time before it starts to get adopted in that way, but there is hope for the future for more objective scoring.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. Like, sport will never go out because, watching robots do gymnastics will never be, in my opinion, as interesting as watching humans. But Change, it takes time, just as human nature. We don't like it. We don't want to adapt to it. We get comfortable in our routines, and I mean, maybe one day I'll be a grandmother then.
Let's. I don't think so. I think it might be earlier than that, but we'll see. You've just described some of the challenges that you went through, but you also talked about a period where you experienced burnout. You left gymnastics, and then you made a powerful comeback back to the sport. What inspired you to do that? Was it a love for gymnastics? Did you feel like you left something unfinished, or was it something else?
So I actually left Australian gymnastics after the Olympics because I had already pre-signed a full ride scholarship to Oregon State. And I mean, after Beijing, I was like regretting this signature. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do like another 4 years of this sport? I feel so done, so rinsed, and so broken and shattered. And I went over to Oregon State and I entered the gym, the training gym, and honestly, I was blown away. It was a totally different environment. I'm surrounded by other 18, 19-year-olds and plus, because I was coming in as the freshman. And the coaching style there was like, I did a turn and it was like, Olivia, that was awesome. We love the way you could like snap your legs like that. You could tighten yourself right here, but great job. And I was like, what is going on? I'm like so used to like either one being ignored or two just getting this, no, not good enough.
And you're getting celebrated for every move you're making.
It was wild to me, this environment and this coaching style where they compliment sandwich. So they like highlight things that they love that you're doing well. They give you a correction. And because you're feeling so motivated and pumped up, you want to fix the correction, and then everything was about the team. And I really loved that because like you said, like individual sports, even though they put 6 of us together for Beijing, like you've just felt like 6 individuals that will act together. Whereas here, everything was done for the team goal, for the team to qualify the finals at the NCAA. So like it really changed my mindset. And also with America, I mean, they don't show up for the free T-shirt. All right. Like when America they go to win. And I felt like in Australia, the goal was just to get to the Olympics. So like they really shaped my mindset and rewired it to go like, why was I just trying to get there? And why don't we try and go for gold? So I think my 4 years there, one, I learned more in 4 years than I did my 11 years in Gymnastics Australia. And then also I just came back and I felt like I loved the sport all over again. And it was more shaped around me as a human being than me as an athlete. And I came back and I suddenly knew how to train smart. I didn't need like to burn my body out. I didn't need to do all these extra reps. Like, why aren't we training smart? And why aren't we being more positive and encouraging and supporting one another? So I did come back to Australia for a couple of years. I had to beg. To compete at the national championships again. But again, I got faced with you're too old, because I was 19 in Beijing and I was the oldest gymnast in Australia, the female. So 4 years later, obviously nothing changed. But yeah, I ended up competing and got my 7th title on the uneven bars and got asked to join the national team again. But again, that it wasn't that environment. And I'm a firm believer that who you surround yourself, like who you're being influenced, even if you're the most like positive person in the entire world, if you are surrounded by just negative, over time you evolve and you adapt and you become who you surround yourself with. So yeah, it just took 2 years and I was back to that really unhealthy mental space, and yeah, it it was an environment thing, I think.
It's such a powerful reflection. As you were talking about your experience at Oregon State University, I feel so much joy that you were able to experience that as part of your journey, because that's why you started. It was that first experience you had at the gym and the awe that you felt.
Totally.
And when athletes go through similar experiences that you have, some of them never regain or re-find that joy and that spark. And it's so important, because that should ultimately be the biggest driver for what we do, because it is a grind and it's so much hard work and so much discipline. Obviously not great that you went, back to a less healthy environment, but the reflection is really powerful on the environment and the people and the places you surround yourself with. There's a great author called Malcolm Gladwell. Have you ever read the book The Outliers?
I haven't, but I love book recommendations. So
he's a brilliant.
What's it called again?
The book is called The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and I can't remember if it's in exactly this book. It's a brilliant book, but he shares a message that for anyone who's wanting to change their life, to achieve something in particular, to become a certain person, whatever it might be, he says the fastest way to do that is to locate to an environment where people are already like that. So if you want to be extremely fit and you're surrounded by unfit people with an unfit diet, the reason he says why it's so important is the level of will it takes to pursue a certain path when your environment is doing exactly the opposite is extremely high, and it makes your chances of success much less likely. And so he says that is by far the most accelerated way to be the person that you want or to achieve the thing that you want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. The circle of influence is so important. And I think we kind of forget that. And we just, again, we're hesitant to change and we get stuck in routine sometimes. And, changing your environment, like actually putting yourself in a new space is easier said than done sometimes. So it does take sometimes a harsh reality, or a harsh wake-up call to go, I need to make a change. Unfortunately, as humans, it's kind of like we don't show up to the physiotherapist and we're like, please give me a rehab program because I do not want to hurt my knee. It's like no one buys rehab. They normally change something once there's a problem. It is that going, like, you have to have that self-awareness first. But I love just the question of what do you want?
Yeah.
We often forget to ask ourselves that, or we get caught up in life and we're so busy and we're just doing things rather than thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So it's kind of like you start at, what do I want? Do I want a healthier diet, or do I want more success in business, or do I want a better family life, or do I want a better relationship with my kids? Just figuring out what you want. But then I love the next step of asking yourself, why do you want it? Because like you said, most things are really hard to change, and it's a grind and it's an everyday practice, and we get deterred easy. So if you can figure out the why you want it, and everyone's why is different and it's okay, and you'll be at a different stage, it's totally fine. But if you can find the why you want, then on the days where you don't feel like doing the hard work, if you can remind yourself why you're doing it, it just makes it so much easier. But putting yourself into those new circles could just be a figuring out, what do you want, why do you want it, and then asking, how do I get it and who has it? What circles do I need to be in, or what person do I need to spend more time with because they have the thing that I want? Backtracking to what you want and why you want it, it helps making those changes easier. They're not easy, but if they can make more sense to you, it helps.
Yeah, it's really important, and it does take courage because it's not easy to change. We're all familiar, or familiarity by habit, so it's a difficult thing to do. But I really love the way that you talk about when you know who you are and why you do something. It's easy to come back to that and ground in that truth. And I can't remember exactly who said this, but it's there's a saying that goes like, most people generally make a change when the cost of staying the same is greater than the cost of change, but it's often much, much earlier that a change should be enacted.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's, you talk to kind of what's important to actually make that change.
Yeah. But I like, I think COVID really emphasized the importance of mental health. And with that, we see a lot more gratitude and self-care and wellness coming into the space, which is fantastic. I'm a big fan of it. And hopefully people do take more time for themselves, because naturally as humans, we're more likely to do stuff for other people. Especially in Australia, we have this if you went and did something for yourself, others are kind of like, oh, you're a bit selfish, aren't you? So
yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that.
We need to rewire that and go, well, actually, if I take care of myself, I can take care of the people around me at a much better standard, at a much better level. Because if you're in a bad mood and you show up to work, suddenly you're just placing that on someone else. Or if you're run down, you're tired, you're not performing at your optimum for other people. So if we can rewire that and actually see ourselves as something we should be investing in, something we should be taking care of, so that we can take care of others better, it's just rewiring those values and those understandings as well, which again will take time, but again, it comes down to understanding that, hey, if I take care of myself, or if I go have that massage, or if I go do my meditation here, if I do treat myself, then hey, I'm in a better mood and I can bring the others around me up. So yeah, it's just changing the perspective a little bit. Totally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm so excited to talk about Ninja Warrior. So
yay!
I have watched you through multiple seasons.
Yeah.
So inspired every time that you were performing. I think a part of it was because you were you were a girl can do this, and you were always quite a tough competitor in what was also a male-dominated sport. So I was always cheering you on. But I think a lot of the inspiration also came from it's hard to be what you can't see, and it was so great to see you on that stage.
Yeah.
I first want to ask, how does one become a ninja?
Well, for me, I was kind of dragged in it in a sense. I think it's such an expensive production to put on. They get all the trust from America, and there's months and months of setup and stuff like that. So I think season 1, they were okay, we need some people that might be able to do the course. Because I felt like they got a lot of former Olympic gymnasts or Olympic athletes and stuff like that. Because I showed up on that first day, in the heat, and it felt like a reunion. I was like, oh, hey. I think season 1, they were okay, she's an Olympic gymnast, let's get her in. But I had no idea what I was doing. I actually thought I was showing up for something like Wipeout. I had my own cafe at the time, and I was working 7 days a week because, let's face it, I didn't own the cafe. The cafe owned me at that point. And so I wasn't doing any exercise or any sport, but I was enticed by this free trip to Sydney. And you never forget when I first saw that course and was like, oh my God, this is not Wipeout. And then thinking, I was like, oh my God, I should have trained, or I should have gone for a run or something. I thought I'd be wearing a life jacket.
And you're looking at these obstacles that look extremely tough.
I know, it's mental. I think a part of me just thought I was getting a free trip to Sydney. When you look back, I was like, why don't you do some research, Olivia? But it's one of these shows where they show you the course an hour before they start filming. You don't get to jump up there and try it. You don't get to test it. A big part of the drama and the fear is that our run is our first time trying these obstacles. A lot of people don't understand watching the show. But, in a sense, I love that it is such a fair show. The producers just set this crazy course up, and then they sit back and hope. They can't control the athletes, they can't control the contenders, so they're just hoping that people make it through. They hope that you get some spills and some crashes. You hope for some dramatic storytelling. So, yeah, it's a very unique show. But I failed my first year, face planted that wall 3 times, but I had the best time, and I felt something was lit in me. I was like, because I didn't go through to semifinals. I wasn't, didn't make it through, but I wanted to. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like something had ignited again.
A fire. Fire was ignited within you.
This really strong fire, because I really wanted to go to semifinals. So I flew back to Perth, and I was all sad and disappointed. And I think those are important moments to sit in as well, because it makes us realize what we want. And then you figure out, okay, how do I get it? So did a little research finally, and I found that there was a ninja academy in Perth.
Ninja academy in Perth. Is there ninja academies everywhere across the country?
Not necessarily that name. And at that time, that was one of the very first. And Dave Ravi, the guy that set it all up, he was an accountant. And he was a big fan of the Japanese ninja. It's called Sasuke. It's the original. They're the originators.
And you've competed there recently, right?
Yes. Yeah, I know. Massive honour, because that's an invite only. So that was the definite highlight of my career. But, yeah, he totally changed his life and set up this gym, and in turn, created a community and a space for people from all backgrounds. I was a gymnast, but you've got accountants in there, you've got machine workers, you've got mums, you've got dad. It just became a mix of people that were crazy enough to start training some obstacles. So to become a ninja, I say anyone can. Everyone is. They're a ninja in their own space. You get people that sit there on the couch watching the show, and they're like, I could do that.
I could do that.
Yeah.
I've definitely thought that. There's some obstacles where I'm like, I reckon I can do that.
I can do that. Yeah. See, couch ninja. Boom. You're already, you're visualizing.
One step of the way there.
Yeah. So anyone can. It's just a matter of, for me, again, I was in a cafe 7 days a week, which I loved. I genuinely loved. But I went from training once a week, after work, and then twice, and then 3 times. And then I bought a membership, because one-off casual visits are quite expensive. So it just became something I just slowly started, and then got more and more invested in. And went back season 2 with the goal to beat that warped wall to finally get up, which I knew I could do in the gym. It took me 6 months, by the way. It was not easy. I had little chicken legs. But then, of course, my mentality shift, because I'm a big fan of standing out. Why just do something the same way that 100 other people are going to do it? At the end of the day, this is TV. And if you can understand that, you can use that to your advantage. So I remember showing up for season 2. I was so nervous. I was more nervous for that run than I was at the Olympic Games. It's with the Olympics and gymnastics, I'd done my routine 1,000 times. The pressure came from doing it when the green light was on. But here I am looking at 5 obstacles I've never done before, knowing I could do the 6th warp wall, knowing
you need
I
to
could
get
do
there.
the end one. Need to get there. But I did get there, and I got up there and turned around and did a backflip.
You had these crazy moves. So for anyone who hasn't seen, you didn't decide to go up the wall frontwards like everyone else does. You got up there, you flipped around, and then you backflipped on top of the podium, which was the most wow moment. And I remember the commentators as well were just in awe. Completely
I know, they had no idea what was going on, but no one did. I didn't tell anyone. My close ninja community knew that I was probably going to do something stupid. It's not stupid, something crazy. But it wasn't like I went and talked to the producers. I didn't have that communication line with them to go hey, you should have camera angles here and here and here, because this is what I'm going to do. It was just this secret little goal and plan that I had inside my head. So, everyone was completely shocked. The producers came out of their trailer after my run and they're like, oh, thank you. Like that
it was on advertisements everywhere. It was like the pinnacle representing the show.
Yeah. But for me, I was just like, I wanted to beat the warped wall. And then that year I became the first and only female to make the grand final. And then that's when the American mentality swapped after that year, because I was like, why was my goal just to beat a warped wall?
Did you think back to your learnings from
totally,
when you were at Oregon State?
Yeah, 100%. And then I started looking at the Mount Midoriyama and setting that goal to beat the men, which was like anyone that sets a big goal, I feel like there's a pathway, you know, like you're motivated, you're determined, and then something happens, you know, like that big setback, and it makes you question why you're doing it. So for me, like I came into season 3 ready. I was like
pumps rearing to go.
Like, man, physically I was in great shape. I was even like training rope climbs. Like mentally I was there. Again, the only female in the grand final. And stage 1, you're no longer versing like other ninjas for spots. It's either a hit the buzzer and you go through to stage 2 or you're done. You're out. And I remember stage 1, like I was flying. I was like in my zone. I was like bang, bang, bang through the obstacles. I had one more to go, and it's a spider jump. So like a trampoline, and then you lodge yourself like in this tunnel that has 2 walls. And I'd done that obstacle before. I'd done it in America, and they have like their fries, they're supersized, right? So they had supersized spider jumps. So I was like, great. And so I look back and I've got a minute left. And I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And so I run, and whenever you're doing a tramp jump, like you commit. It's like there's 100% or nothing.
You're not going to make that.
And so I committed. And like 2 or 3 steps in, I just trip on a mat. Like my knee fully buckles, but I'd committed. And so like I kept going, but I'm also trying to stop myself, but I couldn't stop myself. And I ended up like just running and stumbling over this trampoline and like running into the water. And I just remember my heart sank in that moment. Like it felt like I was living a nightmare. And you're just like, your brain's just like, this can't be real. This is not real. This is not real. Like, you know, all those sorts of, can I just rewind time? Like this is not happening right now. And I think after that moment, because it takes so much work, I think a lot of people just see me show up on the show and they're like, Olivia, she's amazing. But I don't feel like the show ever highlighted or showcased what it actually takes to be that good, because it does take a lot of hard work and it does take a lot of mental resilience, especially when you're trying to do something that no one else has ever done before. You can't look at a role model and go, well, she did it, so I can do it. Like I was trying to be that role model. So it was like just a lot of external pressure that I put on myself. And in that moment, that's when I had to ask myself why I was doing it. Because I had the goal. Like I didn't actually know why I was doing it.
What was your why?
Well, it wasn't easy to find the why. You do have to ask yourself a series of questions and keep asking yourself why, and just dig deep. And for me, I think it stemmed from my childhood of always being told I couldn't do something. You know, with gymnastics, I was told I'd be too tall. I'd never get very far in the sport. And then even when I came back, you're too old. And when I started Ninja and again, like started saying I want to beat the men, I got you're a woman. You're not going to beat the men. So it stemmed from that little girl. And for me, when I watched the TV or if I looked at a gymnast that was taller, and if I said, if she can do it, I can do it, that was my why. I wanted to be that role model for that little girl watching the TV. And if she's ever thinking about entering a male-dominated sport or business or workplace or whatever, if she can look and go, if she can do it, I can do it. That was my why. It was for the little girl, for that young girl. So once I figured that out, everything changed. It was like, this is why I'm doing it. And then I built the cafe up to a point where it was in the green, it was healthy, and I chose to sell it because I was like, well, I want to commit 100% to this ninja. And to do that, I need to give it absolutely everything I've got. So I changed everything else because I understood my why. So it was very powerful. It still wasn't easy, and it still took many years to finally get there. But yeah, digging deep and figuring that out helped make every other decision kind of like a no-brainer.
You definitely were able to achieve your why. And I guess personally speaking, I remember watching you and just thinking, wow, I want to be like her. Like I remember being inspired to start training, to like even in little ways where my aspiration was never to do exactly that. But you definitely represented that, and I'm sure you did for thousands and thousands of all athletes watching. But what you really, it was so powerful in a show that I think because it brings the entertainment level into the sport as well. You are approaching obstacles that you're doing for the first time. It's hard to train for them. So you can train dynamic strength, but you're still going to approach a lot of invariables as you go through that. And something that I've wanted to really ask, there's that entertainment element. Does that increase the pressure? Or is the pressure different from doing something like gymnastics?
I think once you understand that it is a TV show, rather than like expecting it to be the national championships of ninja, you have a better understanding. And for me, it's like, well, why don't I just use that as an aspect? And for me, like I love being in the moment and reminding myself that I do this because it's fun. Like I get to play on supersized obstacles. Like how good is this? Yes, there's that external pressure, and it definitely built up over the years. But I really like, as terrifying as the lights and the camera and the pressure is, once I start running, I love the audience that's there. Like they sit there for hours, and we film the show between like 8 p.m. to 4 a.m.
That's
so
crazy.
They can control the lighting. It's crazy. And the crowd are sitting there as well, doing the same thing. So for me, it was like, why don't I play with the crowd? Why don't I entertain? I want to do some like fun things and showcase that, like, even though I'm doing something that's extremely hard, it's still important to enjoy it and have fun. Might not be something I get to do forever, so why don't I absolutely make the most of it? But the COVID year,
no crowd, silence.
We lost all the crowd, and that was the year that I finally, got the stage 1 buzzer and made it to stage 2, and there was zero crowd, and there was like a third, maybe a fourth of the staff. There was not even a photographer there. It was just like it was like another show. It was so weird getting up on stage 2, and I was scared to fart. It was so silent. I was like, if I fart, the mics are going to pick it up.
There is no sound to drown anything out.
You couldn't drown anything out. And that year I actually learned how much I really do love and appreciate the crowd, because I was there on the salmon ladder, and I remember thinking, like, I'm exhausted because it was COVID and restrictions were changing. We were filming back-to-back nights. There was no rest. And I was so spent. And because my brain was thinking, I'm so tired, I wasn't thinking about my technique, and I slipped and I fell in the water on something silly, something I could do every day. And that's when I was like, wow, I really appreciate the crowd, because even in the moments that I'm tired, they're cheering, they're supporting, they're giving me energy.
And you're feeling that energy to keep you going and motivated
totally
through the course.
Yeah. So, like those aspects of it I really do appreciate and love. But then there's those other aspects of the pressure and the expectation, because the first time I was the first and only female in the grand final, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like,
go me.
Yeah, I was like,
well done.
yeah. And then over the years, when it continued to be that way, it felt really lonely. And then I felt like all the girls in Australia were relying on me and that pressure that I placed on myself. Because at the end of the day, that's an internal, intrusive thought that we put on ourselves. But it was a lot. Like I remember, like I was losing my hair and not sleeping properly, and
oh wow, it really
it was
you.
a lot. And because I was saying to camera, like, I want to beat the men, I want to win. You kind of feel like you've got these two voices in your head, and you're like, yeah, I want this, and then the self-doubt creeps in, and you're like, well, is this actually logistical? Like, is this possible? And so you kind of feel like part of you is not congruent, and you're asking yourself, like, am I lying? Like, am I lying to others? Am I lying to myself? And just all these thoughts that sort of creep in and they build up. Because every single year I would go, I would try, and I would essentially fail. Like, I'd fall short of that goal. And you'd go in the water, and everyone goes in the drink at some point. Everyone is on the humble bus with Ninja constantly. But yeah, it was a lot. And I think with COVID especially, I definitely like started doing the wrong things. I fell into the trap of, you lose your job and you're like, oh, what am I doing now? And well, for me, I've started watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy. Like, we're talking like back-to-back episodes all day long, to the point where suddenly someone's like, what are you doing, Olivia? And I was like, I'm studying to be a surgeon.
You were committed.
So I definitely like fell, onto a lazy bus, onto maybe a bad routine. And I had to pull myself out. And again, the why helped with that, like reminding myself why. And then eventually I was like, okay, there's no like female out there that's beaten the men, but the American men can beat the Australian men, right? Like, because America's like 16, 17 seasons deep. They're so good. Even their kids are like little ninja weapons.
I've watched YouTube videos. Wow.
Yeah, they're
it's
unbelievable.
impressive.
They literally come out of the womb doing monkey bars. Yeah. Oh, they're unreal. So I started like going to America a bit more and learning from the best of the best there, and came back to Australia, and like I figured out that Ninja is mostly power endurance, and the anatomy of a female to male, unfortunately for me, the male has 300 times more power endurance. And I'm not someone that's like going to jump on a bunch of drugs, just not my value or belief system. So I had to start thinking, okay, well, what can I do? Like with my body, with my strengths, with my mindset and my experience, what can I do? So for me, I started training at midnight about like 3 months leading into the show, because we film at nighttime. And I'm like, well, why am I not training at nighttime?
To start emulating the conditions that you'll perform in.
Totally. And so I was living in Brisbane at the time, and midnight would come and I'd go for a run. Because also, like, I had a bit of an elbow injury, and cardio wasn't my strong point, but I was like, well, let's build the cardio up. And so I started going for these runs. And Brisbane is like nothing but hills. It is hills everywhere. It was crazy cardio. And I was up like 1 a.m. and like these bats would fly out from the trees and the bushes. Like, we don't have like big bats in WA. So I was like, what are they?
Okay, the bats are frightening. But up until this point, you were giving me real Rocky Balboa vibes. Like, I'm picturing you listening to the music, like running up these hills.
Yeah. It didn't feel like that. Trust me. There was like no, Eye of the Tiger going on in my brain. It was just like you can hear your own breath. You're like, I'm dying. Even with the music in, you're like, I'm dying. But yeah, the bats, I was like, yeah, I'm like Batman. But yeah, I just started like training different and really, really worked my cardio. And so showed up to the last season that we filmed. I just felt like so physically fit. And I know I'm used to being that athlete that stops in between each obstacle and I wave and I include the crowd because I made a point of that just because I really do appreciate them. But this season I just showed up and I was like, let's go. Like, let's go. And yeah, in the semi-final, I didn't need to stop on any of the obstacles. I didn't feel exhausted or like I needed a break. And I just kept going. And yeah, that year at the end of the night, I was the fastest ninja by 1 second. I beat my housemate by 1 second. And that was history. And it didn't hit me at the point that I'd just become the first female in the entire world to beat the men. I think it hit me the next day.
How did it feel?
I had a little like breakdown.
You're like, I did it.
Yeah, you finally did it. But then also you know that the show's not even going to air for another 5-6 months.
You can't share the enthusiasm and the excitement just yet.
Yeah. So that was there was a massive moment, and I guess something that no one can ever take away, no matter what. Even when like other women across the world learn about it, they're like,
wow.
Oh my God, they understand how big a deal that kind of was. So that was a really pivotal moment of going, wow, if you want something bad enough, and if you have that like perseverance and the attitude that you're never going to give up, and of course, because I had great moments and then I had my Grey's Anatomy moment, it's all a bit of a roller coaster. But if you start just trying to seek information, new information, me going to the top men in America and implementing stuff that I learned from them, but also thinking about my own strengths, because we're all different from one another. If I tried doing something the same way that a 6'5" male would do it, it just wouldn't work. You always have to come back to your own strengths as well and using that. I truly believe that there's nothing that's impossible if you want it bad enough.
Yeah, when I listen to your story, the things that stand out for me is really the importance of knowing your why, not placing limitations on where you want to get to, despite limitations always existing by the virtue of how society is. Yeah. And then what you just spoke about there, which is there's not just one path to success. And so you spoke about the US, you spoke about doing the runs in Brisbane and thinking about the different advantage that you could build on, which is a really inspiring and special part, because you don't need to be there's no just one way to achieve something, and everyone can look at themselves and what's unique about them and special about them and how they can bring that to the table.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I was looking at a different path, I could have poisoned all the men's water.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
It's the slightly less ethical way to go about it, but you chose the virtuous, strong path forward.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. But yeah, I think as a society, sometimes we want the cookie cutter, or we want the easy route, or we give up too easy. It's just coming back to what you want and why you want it. And then of course, there are multiple pathways. So there's one that will suit you better, and often the ones that you don't want to do are the ones you need to do. But it's definitely it's worth it. It really is worth it. Even with obstacles, I think I fell in love with ninja because there's so many challenging obstacles, and my favorite ones are the ones that I don't get first shot, the ones that I have to work for. They're just so much more rewarding. You really feel that growth, because the growth comes from those uncomfortable moments and times and the learning. So
no, absolutely. And you didn't just work physically to get to where you got to. You were really honing in on mental strength. How do you get into a flow state? Because when I was watching you compete, you take a deep breath before you get started to really get in a zone. But what does that look like for you internally as you're trying to get into that flow state before you take on the course?
Everyone's like, God, you look so confident. You look like so ready. I'm telling you, I'm just an incredible actress. When I'm standing on that platform, I'm shitting myself. I am.
Okay, there's hope for the rest of us.
I'm so nervous. It's the fakest smile I'll ever give. And they really ice you on that platform too. You're up there for ages. And so I've learned through
you're quite literally cold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I think I've learned over time the practice of breathing and how you can regulate your thoughts and your heart rate through breathing. So it's one thing that I really have learnt the hard way. And I was really reluctant because I was just one of those people that were like, ugh, mental health, ugh, visualization, no, ugh, writing things down, ugh, journals. I was just really reluctant to it all. It was new and it was change. But once I really did pursue breathing, because the first 10, 20 times I tried to practice it, you get distracted. My mind was like, oh, this is not working. Move on.
It's almost like meditation initially, where you're not seeing the impact until you practice it over a period of time.
Totally. And I think a part of it, first of all, why would I use it? Is it going to benefit me? And it was like, oh, hang on, you get uncontrollably nervous up on that platform leading up to a run to the point where I lose feeling of my arms and legs. And I need my arms and legs. So it was
very, very important.
Yes. So when someone's like, well, breathing will help regulate that, I was like, fine, if it's going to benefit me, I'll learn how to do that. And then I wasn't learning properly until someone was like, well, let's just try the box method. But it was just that education that made it seem easier. So at first someone was like, just take 10 deep breaths. I get to 4 and I'm like bored. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm doing something else, So for me, I think I just learned over time, okay, well, if I practice on the 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds out, hold for 4. And suddenly my mind is thinking more technical on this thing that is going to help me. I mix that. And I think it's just education that stems in. So for me, it was bananas help calm your nerves. I don't know if it's true.
I never knew that.
Exactly. It was probably just a lie, but I chose to believe it.
And that's what matters. That's what counts.
That's right. So I have bananas on me. I do my box breathing. And for me, a handstand. Because a handstand for me takes 100% of your focus. You're in your zone. And so I feel like for me, it really flushes out the nerves because I'm not thinking about obstacles or the lights, the cameras, the pressure, that I'm thinking about my balance. Those 3 things, for me personally, I found that work. And as you'll find, everyone's different. Some people get really sleepy and tired when they're nervous. And then some people get over energetic and they're speaking really fast and they're annoying everyone around them, figuring out yourself.
And what works for you.
Exactly. A lot of people turn to music and that's because that helps regulate your heartbeat. What we're hearing, our body kind of tunes in with that. So for me, it was bananas,
box breathing and doing a handstand.
It's interesting, different things will work for other people. But I think that's also really helpful for people to just keep asking questions and not take one person's advice, ask around. Everyone has different ideas and different things that work with them. And I know a few other athletes that handstands really help and they can't even do handstands. But, it's distracting the mind. I love all that stuff. And people do ask well, how'd you get so good at gymnastics or how'd you get so good at ninja? And there's no secret pull-up. There's no secret push-up. Everyone wants that. Everyone's like, give me a training program. Unfortunately, the training program is here. It's the mentality, it's the mindset that comes with that.
So there's no shortcut. You can't just join a ninja academy and become the best ninja in the country. Okay.
I mean, if you want, you could ask ChatGPT what the secrets are.
But it won't do the work for you. AI will not take that part away.
No.
And thankfully so, because that's where the reward comes from as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You've achieved so much throughout your entire career and life so far. When you look back at everything you've accomplished, what are you most proud of?
Oh, I think I like beating the men as an achievement wise will probably be really high up there. Getting invited to Sasuke in Japan will be high up there. The Olympics will be high up there. But I think I'm most proud of like the mental work, actually going to psychology and figuring out me and working on myself, because that was a really difficult process. I think once 2020 happened and this Netflix documentary, Athlete A, came out, which highlighted the fear culture within gymnastics. And I was like, whoa, that was like my childhood. And then I started going to psychology and figuring out what all that trauma did and why I act the way I am, or, why my triggers are like this. For a long time, I really hated myself. I think I really struggled, through learning about it. I didn't know it straight away, but self-worth was like my deep seed thing that I made decisions based on it every single day without even realizing it. A lot of the thing would be like, for example, it's like, Olivia, why don't you write a book? And my brain would go, yeah, but who would read that? I'm not worthy of writing a book. And that controlled my life for a good 20 years, And so when I look back at what I've done or what I've accomplished, I think doing the work on myself and figuring out who I am, why I am. I went through that period of really hating my brain. And now I'm coming out on the other end of really freaking loving myself. And going, yeah, you're right. I'm so worthy of that. I am writing a book, I am making decisions based on the idea and that knowledge of I am worth it. So when I look back, I think, yeah, working on myself and doing the hard work there, to come out feeling totally worthy and totally I could achieve absolutely anything I wanted to. Yeah, that really excites me.
That is amazing to hear. And it goes well into the last question, which I think could be relevant for any young athletes or anyone that's young and pursuing a goal or a dream, or anyone listening that has kids, which is, what advice would you share or would you have wanted to hear yourself when you were younger that you felt you really needed?
I think the understanding of different thoughts and where that came from. So, I think for me, again, my experience was I thought I wasn't worthy, and that learning that was an idea that was placed onto me, that was a belief that was placed onto me by someone else. That wasn't my belief, that was placed onto me. So whether it's a young person, actually it's just give yourself some grace. You're young, you've got time, experiment, try different things. You never know what you're going to love or enjoy, but also keep asking yourself, do I enjoy it because I enjoy it? Or is it something that someone else has placed on me or taught to me? So having that self-awareness and questioning what you actually enjoy and who you are as a person and who you want to be as a person, I think is important. And then when it comes to parents, think about the kids and the belief systems that you're placing on them. Is that because you were taught from someone else, or is that because you want your kid to be that? And just having that self-awareness around stuff like that. But I think it's all important for us to be kind to ourselves and be kind and supportive to others, I think. And that comes from my own experience of being in different environments. and how much that I had so much joy and learning and enthusiasm and like excited like to achieve things when I was in a really positive environment. So again, like we spoke about, thinking about who's around you and who you want around you is really cool. But also like, who am I to the people around me? God, so many things. It's like, what's the one piece of advice? And Olivia's like, here's 20.
All of the things that I've learned throughout my career. We definitely got more than we asked for, but thankfully so. We didn't talk about your shirt as well today, but you've got a shirt for anyone just listening on the audio version, Live True, Be You. And I think that so beautifully represents where you've got to on your journey and all the learnings that you've shared. Thank you for being such an inspiration, but also sharing and being quite vulnerable and authentic about the journey that you've gone through as well to get to where you are. And you speak with so much joy, but you can tell the work that's gone behind that. Thank you so much for joining the Moonshot podcast, Olivia.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Next time I want to be in there. I want to be like in the stars and in the galaxy. Totally.
You've got to come in. It's all purple and it's giving a lot of dreamlike vibes. So next time we do this, we'll have to do it in person.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. And thank you. Like, thanks for all the hard work. You know, doing a podcast takes time and dedication, and, you know, you're not necessarily doing it for yourself, but other people benefit a lot from, you know, your hard work and your vulnerability and creating a space to share stories. So, yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for all the hard work you do behind the scenes.
That's very kind. Thank you, Olivia. If you're enjoying this podcast, please rate and subscribe to the show. It helps more than you know, and it really helps me bring all of these inspiring guests. But most of all, thank you for listening, and I can't wait to see you next time.